My name is Ethan, and for as long as I can remember, there's been a certain hierarchy in my family. It wasn't anything explicitly stated, no official family constitution or anything, but it was always there, humming beneath the surface of every birthday, every holiday, every family gathering. At the top, naturally, were my parents, Mark and Susan. Then came my older brother, Liam. And then there was me. Liam was the golden boy. Not in a mean way, at least not intentionally. He was good-looking, athletic, and effortlessly charming. He aced his exams without breaking a sweat, captained the soccer team, and had this easygoing confidence that just seemed to draw people to him. My parents? They absolutely adored him. They weren't bad parents to me, not exactly. They provided for me, made sure I had what I needed. But the enthusiasm, the pride, the sheer delight they showed for Liam was different. It was like he was their masterpiece and I was just a practice sketch. This difference became glaringly obvious a few weeks ago. Liam was graduating from college with a degree in business, something my dad had always subtly steered him towards. The graduation ceremony was a big deal, a whole weekend affair with relatives flying in from out of state. We had a huge celebratory dinner at this fancy Italian restaurant downtown, the kind of place where the waiters wear bow ties and the prices make your eyes water. During dinner, after the third round of toasts and just as my stomach was starting to feel pleasantly full of lasagna, my dad cleared his throat, a big, booming sound that cut through the chatter. "Liam," he said, beaming. "Your mother and I have a little something for you." Liam grinned, already knowing something good was coming. He's always had that knack for knowing when he's about to be showered with praise or presents. My mom pulled out a set of keys from her purse, dangling them dramatically. "We know how much you've always loved classic cars," she said, her voice full of excitement. "So we found this beauty." They then proceeded to describe this vintage Mustang they'd bought for him. A cherry red 1967 model, fully restored, with leather interiors and a powerful engine. Liam's jaw practically dropped. "No way!" he exclaimed, his eyes wide with disbelief and pure joy. He stood up, went around the table, and hugged both my parents tightly, thanking them profusely. Everyone at the table clapped and cheered. It was a real hallmark moment. I clapped too, of course. What else was I going to do? But inside, a familiar little pang of something twinged. It wasn't exactly jealousy, maybe more like a dull ache of resignation. This was just how things were. Liam got the grand gestures, the dream gifts. I wasn't really expecting anything, to be honest. My own graduation had been a much quieter affair a couple of years prior. A nice dinner at home, a card with some cash, perfectly acceptable, but a far cry from a classic Mustang. The next day, after all the relatives had left and the house had returned to its usual state of controlled chaos, my dad called me into the garage. He was standing next to something covered with a dusty old tarp. Liam's brand new Mustang was parked proudly in the driveway, gleaming in the sunlight. "Ethan," my dad said, pulling the tarp off the object in the garage with a flourish. Underneath was Liam's old scooter. It was a beat-up thing, scratched paint, a cracked seat, and one of the mirrors was held on with duct tape. Liam had used it to get around in high school, but it had been sitting in the garage and used for years. I blinked. Yeah, I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. My dad clapped me on the shoulder, a little too enthusiastically. "Happy belated graduation, son. Liam's got his new wheels, so we figured you could use this to get around." He gestured proudly at the dilapidated scooter. "It still runs, you know, just needs a little TLC. I stared at the scooter. TLC? It looked like it needed a complete overhaul, maybe even an exorcism. Liam had practically abandoned it years ago. Right? I said slowly, trying to process this. So, Liam gets a fully restored classic car, and I get his broken-down scooter? My dad chuckled, like I just made a hilarious joke. "Well, we couldn't just throw it out, could we? And it's perfectly functional for short trips around town. Saves on gas, too." My mom joined us in the garage, a bright smile on her face. "Think of it as practical, Ethan. Besides, Liam needs the garage space for his new car. Practical. That was the word they always used for me. Liam was the dreamer, the one who deserved the grand, impractical gifts. I was the practical one, the one who should be grateful for hand-me-downs and sensible solutions. I felt a surge of something hot and unpleasant rising in my chest. It wasn't just about the scooter. It was about the years of subtle and not-so-subtle differences in how they treated Liam and me. It was about the constant feeling of being second best, the afterthought. "Thanks," I managed to say, my voice tight. "It's just what I always wanted." The sarcasm was thick enough to spread on toast, but they didn't seem to notice. They were too busy admiring their own cleverness at recycling Liam's old junk. Later that day, I was in my room, staring at the scooter through the window of the garage. It sat there like a rusty monument to my place in the family pecking order. I thought about Liam, probably out cruising in his shiny new Mustang, feeling like the king of the world. And then I looked at my own car, a perfectly reliable but utterly unremarkable sedan I'd bought myself with my own savings from my part-time job in college. Felt adequate, just like me in their eyes. A wave of frustration washed over me. I wasn't some ungrateful brat. I worked hard, I was responsible, I tried to be a good son. But it never seemed to be enough to earn the same kind of enthusiastic approval they showered on Liam for just existing. I picked up my phone and called my best friend, Noah. I needed to vent, to hear a voice that wasn't dripping with oblivious favoritism. "Hey man, what's up?" Noah answered, his usual cheerful tone a welcome contrast to the internal turmoil I was feeling. "You won't believe what my parents just pulled," I said, and I proceeded to tell him about the Mustang and the scooter, the whole infuriating saga. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then Noah said, his voice laced with disbelief, "They actually gave you Liam's old scooter? Seriously?" "Seriously?" I confirmed, sighing heavily. "It's like they're actively trying to tell me I'm not as important." "That's messed up, Ethan," Noah said, and just hearing him acknowledge how unfair it was made me feel a little better. "What are you gonna do?" I didn't know. Part of me wanted to just laugh it off, to accept it as the status quo. But another part of me, a part that had been simmering for years, was starting to boil over. I was tired of being the practical one, the one who didn't need or deserve the grand gestures. I wanted to feel valued, truly valued, by my own parents. Over the next few days, the scooter sat untouched in the garage. I continued with my routine, going to my job as a junior architect at a small firm, meeting up with Noah for our usual Friday night pizza, calling my parents occasionally to give the obligatory updates. But something had shifted inside me. The resentment that had been a low hum was now a persistent thrum. One evening, I was sitting at my desk, trying to focus on a blueprint, but my mind kept drifting back to the scooter. I imagined my parents, so pleased with themselves for their practical gift, completely oblivious to the hurt they'd caused. And then I thought about Liam, probably showing off his Mustang to all his friends, not giving a second thought to the rusty scooter gathering dust in the garage. That's when the idea started to form, a small, rebellious spark in the darkness of my frustration. What if I didn't just accept this? What if I did something unexpected? Something that would make them see, really see how I felt. The more I thought about it, the more the idea solidified. It was a little crazy, maybe even a little petty, but it felt right. It felt like the only way to finally break free from this ingrained family dynamic. I decided then and there that I wasn't going to just let the scooter sit in the garage. I was going to do something with it, something that would make my parents, and maybe even Liam, take notice. And it wasn't going to be what they expected. My plan, as it started to take shape, was simple, audacious, and maybe a little bit crazy. I decided I was going to enter the old scooter in the annual Oak Hill Town Fair's Anything with Wheels race. It was a local tradition, a bit of fun, with everything from souped-up lawnmowers to kids on tricycles participating. The winner got a ridiculously oversized trophy and bragging rights for the year. The idea came to me in a flash of inspiration, fueled by equal parts anger and a desire to prove something. My parents thought the scooter was just a piece of junk, a practical solution for the ungolden child. Well, I was going to show them that even this old, beat-up scooter could have its moment. I started working on it in secret, spending my evenings in the garage after work. Noah came over to help, and together we cleaned it up, tightened the loose bolts, and even gave it a fresh coat of paint, a bright, unapologetic blue. I replaced the cracked seat and managed to find a second-hand mirror that actually fit. It wasn't going to win any beauty contests, but it was functional and it looked determined. I didn't tell my parents what I was doing. I wanted it to be a surprise. Liam, of course, was completely oblivious, too busy enjoying the attention his new Mustang was getting. He'd occasionally wander into the garage, see me tinkering with the scooter, and just shake his head with a condescending smile. "Still messing with that old thing, Ethan?" he'd say, before heading back out to polish his prized possession. The day of the town fair arrived, bright and sunny. I loaded the scooter into the back of my car, Noah riding shotgun, a grin plastered across his face. "You really gonna do this, man?" he asked, still slightly incredulous. "Yep," I said, feeling a nervous excitement bubbling in my stomach. Time for the underdog to have its day. We arrived at the fairgrounds, a bustling scene of food stalls, carnival games, and rows of vehicles lined up for the race. I registered the scooter under the name The Practical One, a little jab at my parents. As I waited for my heat to be called, I saw my parents and Liam arrive. They were strolling through the fair, Liam looking particularly pleased with himself, probably expecting to run into people who'd heard about his amazing graduation gift. I saw my mom point towards the racetrack, and they started walking in that direction. My heart pounded in my chest. This was it. My heat was announced, and I wheeled the scooter to the starting line. There were a few other participants in my group, a kid on a BMX bike, a woman on a souped-up mobility scooter, and a teenager on a flashy dirt bike. I felt a little out of place on my humble blue scooter. Then I saw them. My parents and Liam were standing by the fence, watching the racers line up. My mom's eyes scanned the vehicles, a look of mild amusement on her face. My dad was chatting with Liam, probably still basking in the glow of their extravagant gift. The starting flag dropped and we were off. The dirt bike zoomed ahead, the BMX kid pedaled furiously, and the mobility scooter puttered along at a steady pace. I kicked off and the scooter sputtered to life, chugging along surprisingly well. I wasn't trying to win, not really. I just wanted to finish, to show them that this practical gift wasn't something to be dismissed. As I rounded the first turn, I glanced over at my parents. My mom was still looking around, seemingly unimpressed by the motley crew of racers. My dad was still talking to Liam. Then, as I came around the second turn, something unexpected happened. The teenager on the dirt bike, who had been way ahead of everyone else, suddenly swerved and crashed. His bike skidded across the track, and he went tumbling into the hay bales. The race marshal waved the yellow flag, and everyone slowed down. As we cautiously made our way past the accident, I saw an opening. The BMX kid was struggling on the loose gravel, and the mobility scooter was losing steam. I gave the scooter a little more throttle, and to my surprise, it responded. It wasn't fast, but it was steady and reliable. I overtook the mobility scooter, then the struggling BMX kid. Suddenly, I was in second place with only the lead dirt bike now back in the race but with a significant delay ahead of me. The crowd started to cheer as the unlikely sight of the beat-up blue scooter chugging along in the lead became apparent. I could see my parents now. Their conversation had stopped. My mom's mouth was slightly open, and my dad's eyes were wide with disbelief. Even Liam looked surprised, his usual smug expression replaced with a look of utter confusion. I crossed the finish line in first place. A wave of cheers erupted from the crowd. Couldn't believe it. I had actually won. I pulled over to the side of the track, a goofy grin spreading across my face. The race marshal handed me the oversized trophy, a ridiculous golden monstrosity that looked like it belonged in a bowling alley. I hoisted it above my head, feeling a surge of triumph mixed with a healthy dose of absurdity. My parents and Liam came over, their faces a mixture of shock and something else. My mom was the first to speak. "Ethan, is that Liam's old scooter?" "Yep," I said, still grinning. "Figured I'd put your practical gift to good use." My dad just stared at the scooter, then at the trophy, then back at the scooter. Liam looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. You won? My mom stammered, still trying to process what had happened. Sure did, I said, hefting the trophy. Guess it had more life left in it than you thought. The silence that followed was thick with unspoken words. My victory wasn't just about the race. It was about the years of being overlooked, the constant comparison to Liam, the feeling of never quite measuring up. In that moment, holding that ridiculous trophy, I felt like I had finally proven something, not just to them, but to myself. The rest of the day at the fair was interesting. People kept coming up to me, wanting to take pictures with the practical one and its unlikely champion. My parents trailed behind me, still looking slightly dazed. Liam, surprisingly, was relatively quiet, though I caught him shooting envious glances at the trophy. That evening, when we got home, my dad called me into the living room. He looked uncomfortable. Ethan, he began, shuffling his feet. About the scooter and the Mustang. Yeah, I said, bracing myself for some kind of backhanded compliment or an attempt to downplay my win. Well, he said, looking at my mom for support. We might have gotten a little carried away with Liam's graduation gift. We just wanted to give him something special, something he'd always remember. And the scooter wasn't special? I asked, raising an eyebrow. My mom stepped forward. No, honey, that's not what we meant. It's just, we know how much Liam wanted that Mustang. And we thought the scooter would be useful for you. Practical, I supplied, the word feeling heavy with irony. There was another awkward silence. Then my dad sighed. Look, Ethan, we're proud of you for winning the race. It was unexpected. Unexpected, I echoed, a small, bitter laugh escaping my lips. Yeah, I guess my accomplishments usually are, aren't they? My words hung in the air, the unspoken truth finally out in the open. My parents looked at each other, a flicker of understanding passing between them. Ethan, my mom said softly, we haven't always been fair to you. We've focused so much on Liam. Maybe we haven't given you the attention you deserve. I stared at them, surprised by their admission. It wasn't a full-blown apology, but it was a start. It's not just about the gifts, I said, trying to articulate the years of underlying resentment. It's about feeling like I'm always second, like my achievements don't matter as much. Liam walked into the living room, drawn by the unusual seriousness of the conversation. He looked from me to our parents, a rare look of thoughtfulness on his face. Hey, Ethan, he said, his tone surprisingly genuine. That was pretty cool what you did today. I didn't think that old scooter had it in her. Yeah, well, sometimes the things you least expect can surprise you, I replied, looking directly at him. The tension in the room slowly started to dissipate. It wasn't a magical fix. The years of ingrained family dynamics weren't going to vanish overnight, but something had shifted. My parents had finally acknowledged their favoritism, and Liam, for the first time, had seemed to see me as something other than just his less successful younger brother. Over the next few months, things started to change slowly but surely. My parents made a conscious effort to be more involved in my life, asking about my work, my friends, my hobbies. They even started inviting Noah over for dinner occasionally. Liam, too, started treating me with more respect, even asking for my advice on a few things. The oversized trophy from the town fair sat proudly on my bookshelf, a constant reminder of the day I finally made them see me. It wasn't about the scooter itself, or even about winning the race. It was about proving that I was more than just the practical one, more than just Liam's shadow. I had my own strengths, my own worth, and I had finally found a way to make my family acknowledge it.